They called him the franchise. But that nickname didn't come from hype, commercials, or championships. It came from survival. Floyd Little entered pro football at a time when black greatness was welcomed as long as it came without demands. He didn't just join the Denver Broncos in 1967, he kept them alive. A struggling, nearly relocated franchise put its future on the shoulders of a black running back from Syracuse and asked him to carry everything. And he did. He ran harder than anyone in the league. He led in yards on losing teams. He became captain as a rookie. He played hurt, played proud, and played without the safety net other stars were given. Yet, there were no playoff games, no national spotlights, no quick path to immortality. This is the story of a man who did everything right on the field, in the classroom, and in the community, and still had to wait decades for the respect he earned in real time. Welcome to Old School Sundays, where we revisit the legends history rushed past and tell the full stories they never taught you. Long before Floyd Little became a Hall of Famer, his life was shaped by loss, discipline, and expectation. Floyd Little lost his father when he was just 6 years old. Growing up in New Haven, Connecticut, he was raised by a single mother who was responsible for 6 children in a time when black families were rarely afforded grace, margin, or safety nets. From an early age, Floyd understood something many athletes didn't learn until much later. Talent might open a door, but character was the only thing that kept it open. That understanding followed him through Hill House High School and later Bordentown Military Institute, where structure, accountability, and discipline weren't optional. They were survival tools. Football wasn't just a game for Little, it was a proving ground. At 5'11 and 195 pounds, with elite speed and rare balance, he stood out physically. But what separated him was how seriously he carried himself. In an era when black athletes were often reduced to raw ability, Floyd made sure coaches, teammates, and institutions saw preparation, intelligence, and leadership. When he arrived at Syracuse, the weight only increased. The number 44 jersey wasn't just a number, it was a symbol of black excellence already defined by Jim Brown and Ernie Davis. Wearing it meant comparisons were inevitable and forgiveness was non existent. Little didn't stumble into that responsibility. Ernie Davis himself encouraged Floyd to come to Syracuse, knowing exactly what the number demanded. For Floyd Little, greatness wasn't something he chased. It was something he was expected to uphold. Every snap, every carry, every day. By the time Floyd Little took the field at Syracuse, he wasn't just playing football. He was auditioning against history. Wearing number 44 meant every run came with comparison, every mistake felt amplified. And excellence was treated as the baseline rather than the achievement. For a black running back in the mid 1960s, the margin for error was thin and forgiveness was non existent. Floyd Little didn't just meet the standard, he exceeded it. In 3 seasons and only 30 regular season games, he rushed for 2,704 yards and 46 touchdowns, averaging over 5 yards per carry. But reducing Floyd Little to a runner misses the point. He was a weapon everywhere. He caught passes out of the backfield, returned punts and kickoffs with game-breaking speed, and even threw touchdown passes. In 1965 alone, he led the nation in all-purpose yards and punt return average, turning special teams into a weekly highlight reel. Still, the accolades never fully matched the dominance. Little finished fifth in the Heisman Trophy voting twice, a quiet reminder of how high the bar remained for black excellence, even when the production was undeniable. He delivered historic performances, 5 touchdowns in a single game, 200-yard rushing nights, and multiple punt returns of 90 yards or more. He was the engine for Syracuse's offense. Syracuse celebrated him, but college football as a whole treated his brilliance as expected, not extraordinary. By the time his college career ended, Floyd Little had done everything the game asked of him and then some. The question wasn't whether he was ready for the next level, it was whether the next level was ready to fully value what he was bringing with him. When Floyd Little entered the professional ranks in 1967, the moment should have been simple. He was a 3-time All-American, a proven star, and the 6th overall pick in the first common AFL-NFL draft. Most players in his position chose stability, visibility, and a clearer path to winning. Floyd chose something else entirely. Floyd signed with the AFL's Denver Broncos, a franchise fighting for relevance, bleeding fan entrance, and quietly flirting with relocation. Denver wasn't offering championships or national attention. What they offered was uncertainty, and yet the league understood something important. If Denver was going to survive, it needed a face the public could still believe in. That face was Floyd Little. His signing did more than just fill a roster spot. It generated ticket sales, media attention, and credibility for a young league still battling the NFL for legitimacy. The Broncos didn't just draft Floyd, they marketed him. A black running back with discipline, intelligence, and star power became the symbol of hope for a franchise that had none. In time, his presence would help convince voters to approve funding for the expansion of Mile High Stadium. This isn't a metaphor, that's impact. But this decision came with a cost. Floyd Little was asked to carry a franchise before it was capable of carrying one. There would be no stacked rosters, no playoff safety nets, and no patience for decline. From day one, he wasn't treated like a young star to be developed, he was treated like the solution. That's how he earned the nickname the franchise, not because it sounded good, but because Denver's future depended on him being exactly that. Once Floyd Little became the franchise, there was no easing into the role. He was expected to produce immediately, consistently, and without complaint, even as the pieces around him never caught up. Floyd Little didn't just carry the ball for Denver, he carried the identity of the team. Statistically, his dominance was undeniable. During a 6-year stretch from 1968 to 1973, Little rushed for more yards and gained more yards from scrimmage than any running back in professional football. He led the league in combined yards, became the smallest back to lead the NFL in rushing since World War II, and made history as the first player ever to lead his conference in rushing while playing for the last place team. Those aren't empty numbers. They're evidence of excellence achieved in isolation. Yet the league context mattered. Denver rarely gave Little the protection, roster depth, or quarterback stability that other elite backs enjoyed. He was named team captain every season of his career, including his rookie year, a reflection of trust, but not necessarily investment. For black stars of that era, leadership often came with responsibility, not leverage. Floyd was praised for toughness, durability, and professionalism, while the franchise remained content letting him absorb the punishment. There were no playoff runs to amplify his greatness, no January moments to freeze his legacy in national memory. In an NFL that rewards winners first and context later, Floyd Little's resume lacked the one thing voters and fans were conditioned to look for: postseason visibility. But here's the truth history often glosses over: Floyd Little didn't fail to reach the playoffs. The Broncos failed to build a playoff team around a Hall of Fame level black running back who had already proven he could carry more than his share. For Floyd Little, excellence on the field was never enough. In an era when black athletes were celebrated for performance but scrutinized for everything else, he understood that survival at the highest level required more than yards and touchdowns. Floyd Little had to be great and unimpeachable. While carrying the workload of an NFL franchise, Little earned a master's degree in judicial administration. He carried himself as a leader not just in the locker room, but in public spaces where black athletes were often expected to entertain, not influence. In 1970, he traveled with a group of players to visit American troops in Vietnam, reinforcing the image of patriotism and responsibility the league felt comfortable promoting. These weren't random choices. They were calculated acts of presence in a system that rewarded black players who made others feel at ease. After football, Floyd didn't disappear. He became a broadcaster, then a successful businessman, opening Ford dealerships in Colorado and California. He immersed himself in charitable work and later returned to Syracuse to serve in athletic administration. His awards reflected this dual expectation: honors for character, service, and citizenship. The Brian Piccolo Award, the Whizzer White Award, Walter Camp Man of the Year. Recognition framed not around dominance, but around decorum. That framing matters. White stars were remembered for rings and records. Floyd Little was praised for being responsible, articulate, and safe. Even his own words reflected a man aware of the tightrope he walked, choosing to be uncommon, choosing discipline, choosing intellect in a space that rarely demanded it from others. Floyd Little proved he could master the game. The larger challenge was mastering how to be respected within it without ever being allowed to simply be human. By the time football finally caught up to Floyd Little's impact, the work had already been done decades earlier. The yards were long logged, the punishment absorbed, the franchise saved. Floyd Little had walked away from the game in 1975 as one of the NFL's all-time leading rushers, yet his name rarely surfaced in conversations about the era's great backs. Recognition arrived slowly, almost cautiously. His jersey was retired in Denver. He became a charter member of the Broncos Ring of Fame. Syracuse immortalized number 44 with statues and ceremony. But the sport's highest validation, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, didn't come until 2010, more than 30 years after his final carry. And even then, the context was unusual. Floyd Little became one of only a handful of players inducted into Canton without ever appearing in a postseason game. That fact was often framed as an asterisk when it should have been the evidence. Greatness so undeniable, it survived without playoff moments, without national spotlights, without January highlights. In the end, history corrected itself quietly. No victory laps, no loud re-examinations of how long it took, just a gold jacket long overdue. Floyd Little passed away on January 1st, 2021, after a battle with cancer. He was 78 years old. By then, his legacy was finally secure, not just as a Hall of Famer, but as proof that black excellence doesn't always arrive wrapped in championships. Sometimes it arrives carrying an entire franchise on its back and waits decades for the world to admit what it was seeing all along. Floyd Little didn't just play the game, he carried institutions that needed him more than they ever protected him. His story reminds us that greatness isn't always crowned with rings, and impact isn't always rewarded on time. That's why Old School Sundays exists, to revisit the legend's history rush past and tell the full stories behind the names you were never taught to question. If this story changed how you see the game, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because there are too many Floyd Littles left in the margins, and we're here to bring them back into the light. Thanks for watching.